Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from LastCar.info, and welcome to Behind the Wall after the conclusion of the 200-miler over at the Indianapolis Grand Prix circuit. A fantastic victory for Michael McDowell, ending, of course, pending the results of post-race inspection. His second career victory, his first since the 2021 Daytona 500, and has now punched his ticket into his second playoffs. Really, he was in a position, as they mentioned in the broadcast, to potentially point his way into the playoffs this year with as consistent as that number 34 team has been, but have now punched their ticket after a thrilling caution-free after the first accident that did end up playing a role in the last place battle. But a caution-free, final 74 laps or so of this race between Chase Elliott, Daniel Suarez, and Michael McDowell, the blue and white cars dominating the field in this one. And it was a matter of who was going to blink first, who was going to be perfect, and small mistakes ended up being a big factor in the result of this. And then on top of this, we had a thrilling last place battle with probably the wildest one I have seen, certainly since the 2021 All-Star race, where you had basically a neck-and-neck battle between last two cars in the field coming to the stripe with nobody falling out of the event, and Denny Hamlin making a last-second pit stop to make sure he had tightened lug nuts to avoid a crew chief suspension. In this race here, we had Justin Haley being involved in the only caution of the race. On lap 2, suffered severe damage to the car, but the team managed to get him back out there just one lap down. He ends up losing 2 more laps, at least by the end, at least according to the unofficial results here. There was some ambiguity if we're 2 or 3 laps down. This ended up proving critical because as McDowell was taking the checkered flag, Eric Almirola's car was stopped just short of the finish line at the Yard of Bricks. And depending on when he came down pit road, it must have been coming to the white flag. I didn't see it at the time. I wasn't even following his team. I was still listening to the 31 team's radio. And at the time there, the field was still so strung out. I wasn't sure exactly if that was going to change hands, but ultimately once the 31 car finally did reach the Yard of Bricks, we did have a last change at literally the last possible second. That dropped the number 10 car to last place, the second consecutive last place finish for Eric Almirola in this event after last year, and setting a new record in the process for most laps completed in the event. Cody Ware had the previous record, I believe, at 46 laps coming into this one in the inaugural race a couple of years ago. So a great deal to talk about, the cap of a tremendous weekend for both the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series. We'll talk about all 3 races here as well on the show tonight. Several of the, we had the championship international drivers as part of this. Shane Van Gisbergen showing a 10th place finish unofficially in his follow-up after his thrilling victory at the Chicago Street Course earlier this year. And also Ricky Stenhouse running into most of them between Jenson Button, Kamui Kobayashi, and others. Plenty to talk about, and we'll jump right in from here. So again, Michael McDowell, tremendous vindication for him. I think this is a driver that, his first 2 wins, it's so appropriate that his first 2 Cup Series wins, again, pending the results of post-race inspection, are both at a road course and at a super speedway. Given that in his ride up through the ranks, these were 2 types of tracks that everybody said that he was pretty good at, and he had earned some very strong runs on, just hadn't quite been able to reach victory lane for one reason or another. His Daytona 500 victory a couple years ago came after suffering some damage in the first big wreck in that event, and came back up there and pulled off that victory, which, as the broadcast brought up, also involved Chase Elliott being very close behind there. But Michael McDowell's road course experience is even more notable, given his career, when even he was driving teams like Phil Parsons Racing or HP Racing LLC, running races out there with a very limited backing. It was definitely a part of his career that, that he learned to kind of get his feet under him. Had a lot of experience in racing other series before he even came to NASCAR or got into ARCA and so forth. Still continuing that. Obviously, he won the Road America race in the Xfinity Series a number of years ago for Childress. Just a massive moment for both driver and team. Reminiscent, I think, a little bit of when Jimmy McMurray made his move over to Dale Earnhardt Incorporated and won Daytona in Indianapolis. But this even more so, but these being the first victories of McDowell's career and being able to do it with Front Row Motorsports. I think it's absolutely tremendous. And to be able to win a race of this nature with so few cautions out there, again, very reminiscent of the Cup Series race at Sears Point in 2012, where you had a battle between Clint Boyer and Kurt Busch for most of that event. Much like that event, we saw a battle between basically three different drivers in this one. Again, Chase Elliott and Daniel Suarez really kind of shaking themselves off from the rest of the field there and having a, basically settling the win amongst themselves. But this was I thought, a thoroughly captivating race. I was very impressed with the quality of the broadcast as well. I feel that in leading into this with the international drivers and all the pileups we had in this race last year before the restart zone was moved, I think they kind of overstated the potential of there being a lot of wrecks and so forth. And thankfully, this wasn't that we actually had a pretty competitive event. Allowed the field to string out and track down who was actually going to be competitive. This again made pit stops very critical. We saw this with Daniel Suarez, who very easily could have been the leader off pit road on that final sequence. But again, great job by Steve Letarte in the booth. As much as I'm usually not a big fan of his commentary, undoubtedly he has a great eye for what happens on pit road, as well he should for his own experience. But seeing, that little bit of the air hose getting stuck under the front of the car, how it was kind of even kicked by one of the tire carrier, not deliberately, of course, but all of that leading to it getting snagged under the front of the car and creating about a 4-second deficit that Suarez really wasn't able to gain again at the end of that race. He was about the same deficit behind Chase Elliott for the entire remainder of that. And luckily, because the race went green for as long as it did, he didn't lose any more spots than he did. So he's still in a good position to get a decent points day, and we'll see what happens in these next couple of rounds here as Bubba Wallace now finds himself on the playoff bubble, even after all the points that he's been scoring in the last couple of weeks here too. A lot was going on, and it was nice to see it naturally play out. I'm glad we didn't have some ridiculous caution at the end to throw everything upside down, and maybe somebody from 15th place on the last restart would win. I think that would have detracted from this one a little bit. I do think McDowell probably would have been pretty good on the restart with the restart zone moved back. I think that was a very wise decision. I know there was some controversy over this. I know people had different feelings about it from the Xfinity race in particular. But I think personally it was a big help. I was really fearing that this race was going to be a big mess like it's been the last couple of years. It's not exactly an event I've had circled on my calendar, and I'm certainly among the others that's been waiting to see them bring back the oval race. And I think that's probably another thing to certainly bring up from this event. Having had such a clearly competitive event, does this change anything to people's perception about bringing back the oval next year? We know there's going to be a tire test coming up, and that's basically how the Brickyard 400 itself started, was with a tire test. But is that going to be something that should still be on the table? I think that's worthy of discussion. But easily the best race we've seen on this course, and which is nice given the fact that it had so many problems right from the start when that curb came up and you just had a big wreck, and basically the same corner where Haley wrecked today. This one here, just ordinary, a little bit of bumping and banging that happened when Logano hopped over a curb there and kind of sidekicked him into the fence. But again, very clearly, not too messy of a race there. Besides that, what's also dramatic with a race like this is, of course, every little moment that happens can make you wonder. It's like, oh God, is this going to be a caution? Is this going to be the thing that's going to turn everything on its head? We saw that a number of times. Certainly Ricky Stenhouse's issues with Jenson Button for particular. It seemed like he was unusually aggressive with him during a lot of this race, and ended up spinning out Kobayashi as well. And then you also had Todd Gilliland, McDowell's teammate, who we very nearly had a replay of New Hampshire with the deal with Martin Truex and Christopher Bell. And Bell's wreck at the end very nearly changing the outcome of that. That one did draw a caution there. But this one here, I think NASCAR officiating was very good to let a lot of this clear out. And there were a lot of teams, including Haley's, for a lot of the later stages of this event, that was insisting that there was debris on the track and that nobody was that needed to throw a caution. And I thought NASCAR showed a lot of resistance in not doing that. And luckily not in a situation that would have been dangerous for anybody out there. Todd Gilliland making sure he could get back to pit road. This was probably the reason as was discussed yesterday, that NASCAR was making clear where the runoff areas were that cars could roll off and where emergency equipment could be, perhaps really trying to anticipate a race that wouldn't have a whole lot of cautions in it. And indeed, especially in turn one, or the ovals turn one, seem to be used most often, certainly in the Xfinity Series race with Brad Perez's last place finish and AJ Allmendinger's spin during the Cup Series race today. It played a factor in keeping this race green at the same time. So I'd like to see something very much like that for other road courses, especially Road America, as big as that track is. I think we had a very good race on that track this year as well. But perhaps, again, if local cautions are something they're not going to look into, certainly something where you have more accessible runoffs and really encouraging drivers to make use of that, I think is something that could also improve the competition level at these road courses going forward. But again, congratulations to Michael McDowell, your 2021 Daytona 500 champion, the all-time leader still in Cup Series last place finishes with 35, does not finish last today, and pulls off the victory there by 0.9 of a second. Chase Elliott did work his way through lap traffic quite well at the end. Probably the best we've seen out of that 9 car most of this year, certainly all of this summer, and certainly I would say since even his initial snowboarding injury. But a great performance out of him. If they say that they get a car just as good at Watkins Glen, it's not to say that they couldn't be just as strong next Sunday when they travel to upstate New York there. So we'll see how things turn out. Suarez in third ends up 5.75 seconds behind. Tyler Reddick in fourth. And Alex Bowman, the broadcast made kind of a big deal out of him at one point when it seemed like he wasn't getting talked about at all for the entire broadcast, but did earn a very respectable fifth place finish. Chase Briscoe got a bit of screen time during this one as well. And yet another blue and white car, him running the highpoint.com machine, finishing in sixth. Truex in seventh. Larson in eighth. Christopher Bell in ninth. And Shane Van Gisbergen pulling out the 10th place spot there in his second career Cup Series start. Again, I think, his second straight victory, was not in the cards for him here this time around. Still finishing 25 seconds back of race leader Michael McDowell here at the finish. But regardless, great follow-up to that. I think under all these circumstances here, where apparently they had an issue with the throttle pedal there in the 91 car there, a fine performance out of him and a great finish for him there as well. And still finishing best in class among these other international drivers in there. We did see a bit more of the traditional struggles that we usually do see with road course specialists in this event. But again, I think, really the fact that all of them kind of climbed their way up the standings to run as well as they could would have been good. I think the only way that would have been better is if we got to see Brody Kostecki get up there and actually compete with Shane Van Gisbergen, kind of looking up clips of both of them racing each other in supercars this week in anticipation of this race. It would have been great to see. I think we would have seen that if not for the practice incident there that damaged Kostecki's primary car and sent him to the backup, so he had to kind of climb his way up from the back of the field. We did see for a few drivers there, that was a bit too deep of a hole to climb out of in this case. But let's see, where did Kostecki climbed into the top 20 at one point, but he's showing 22nd in the finishing order here. The next to last car on the lead lap ahead of Kevin Harvick. Mike Rockenfeller, the first car, one lap down. We saw him just behind the leaders there towards the end of this. Rockenfeller taking the 24th place finish there at the same time. But yeah, I think a lot of very impressive runs out there. Hopefully we see Kostecki again. I think that would be really enjoyable. And it was, I certainly enjoyed watching, again, a lot of clips of him this week here and getting ready for this race. And I was wondering if we were going to get that battle. I saw that clip of the race that the two of them had against each other in Perth just recently. And Van Gisbergen working his way around Kostecki there at the end. And just great, very physical, very clean racing. And I think we saw very similar kind of battles out there today as well. So that was very impressive. So we had that at the same time. Bubba Wallace in the 18th spot does, again, defend his spot in the playoffs here. He's now on the bubble, but thanks to the stage points that he'd been amassing these last several weeks, he finds himself in a very good position, but still with two very unpredictable races coming up here to conclude the regular season. And it's anybody's guess how that turns out. Bubba, of course, has been outstanding at Daytona, the super speedways in general, but especially at Daytona, dating back to his runner-up finish in the 2018 Daytona 500. Again, given how unpredictable that race has been, and with the weather in the area that undoubtedly is going to be, because it's been there everywhere this season, it seems like, that could certainly be a factor. Getting through Watkins Glen next week is going to be the next big goal for the 23. I'm sure they're going to be leaning very hard on Tyler Reddick to try to kind of get a foothold and try to get both 2311 cars, the full-time ones that is, entered into the playoffs here at the same time. So we'll find out how that shakes out. Watkins Glen is a tricky beast in its own right, given the fact that it's only 90 laps still, one of the fastest races we have this season, right up there with New Hampshire. You don't really have a chance to kind of, climb back out if you're having any adversity in the early laps. And I think that's going to be something to look at there at the same time. Looking through the rest of the results here, Ty Gibbs came back from a spin very early in the race after winning Saturday's race in the Xfinity Series, had a spin at the beginning of this Cup Series race here, comes back to finish in 12th. Chris Buescher does not win his third consecutive Cup Series race, but finished right behind Van Gisbergen in the 11th spot, so a fine effort for him as well. Austin Cindric in 15th. I think that pretty much outperformed his expectations. Sounded like he was having kind of middling speed. Did not get a top 5 like he got in this race last year, but still a decent run out of him this season. I think he's been doing better than his statistics have kind of shown this season, expecting kind of the sophomore slump here after his Daytona 500 win last year. So we'll see how things shake out. Two drivers that didn't seem to have the right strategy were Denny Hamlin and Brad Keselowski. Looked like they were trying to do something kind of along the lines of Bubba Wallace's strategy, to kind of do the opposite of what everybody else was doing. However, that dropped him back to 19th and 20th when the cautions did not fall their way. So not great performances, but they seemed like they had pretty solid cars. The both of them did too. Too bad to not see Harrison Burton up there as well. He, along with Todd Gilliland, were very strong in this race last year. Unfortunately, not the result this time around. But the Colleague team, again, just a really frustrating afternoon for both of them. Justin Haley gets in that wreck there with Joey Logano, has serious damage, but very impressive that they cleared the crash clock as quick as they did by the race's restart. Got back out there. AJ Allmendinger with his spin from Ryan Blaney. Allmendinger, despite how pessimistic he was on the radio, and I know he has a trend for that. He's another one of these drivers that kind of like Bubba Wallace that really wears his heart on his sleeve. But really tracking the results here, Allmendinger actually climbed his way past a lot of drivers trying to get back up there. He was very nearly in the lucky dog spot at the end of the race there, showing him in the 26th position, given the fact that he fell far back as 38th in a race where everybody was so spread apart and you really didn't have restarts to climb back up there. I think that run is very deserving of attention here, even though it was certainly not the kind of day he wanted given his pedigree on the road courses. And this one in particular has been the A.J. Allmendinger Invitational for so many years there at the same time. Looking at the other road course specialist here, Kamui Kobayashi ends up in 33rd, one spot ahead of Joey Logano. Eric Jones had transmission issues. That dropped him back to 35th, but still one lap down in this one. Back to the road course specialist here. 30th place goes to Andy Lally. Jenson Button up to 28th spot there. Ends up about 3 positions behind Ricky Stenhouse. Looking further back there at the same time. So, really kind of a pretty broad spread between the road course specialists here. But again, Shane Van Gisbergen, once again, the lead of the group here with a decent finish there. And again, a second straight top 10 finish, if not a second straight win. 2 straight top 10 finishes is a fantastic way to start your Cup Series career. So we'll see how things shake out on that. But I got to say, yeah, I really enjoyed this race. I thought it was captivating. I thought the broadcast was solid. As critical as I've been of these broadcasts, I thought that NBC really stepped up their game on this one. And I liked even from yesterday's broadcast when they actually had Jeff Burton and Dale Jr. out at the restart zone to really illustrate where it is and how big it is. We saw this a little bit. They experimented with this in Michigan where they had them out there in turn 4. I thought that was very positive, and I like to see that. I like that they pretty much made a weekly tradition of having them both on pit road when the engines are fired. That's fantastic. I think, honestly, that should be one of the first things you see when you turn on the broadcast. I think that's the kind of thing that really is going to attract a lot of viewers, even if they're casual viewers. You just hear the sound of these cars, and it draws your attention. The sights, the colors, the sounds. That's the kind of thing that's going to bring people not only to watch it on TV, but want to go to the track and experience it themselves, because, of course, that's a whole other experience from one to the other. So a lot of positives going forward from here. But, I think that was easily the best race that we've had at the Indy Road Course, one of the best races we've had this season, not just from the race winner, but also how it played out. Seeing just a natural sequence of pit stops, seeing mistakes be real costly and have a hard time kind of making up ground, and seeing, drivers really just push to their physical breaking point. I have no doubt that there were drivers that were just utterly exhausted at the end of this, given the fact that, you got everybody out there in their cool suits and you're running this in the summer. We had some issues with this in the Xfinity race yesterday too, even with it being run so much later in the day after the lightning hold. But that's definitely another factor too. So I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. I think that was a thoroughly exciting one there too. And again, we'll await the results of post-race inspection to see if the outcome of both the last place battle and the battle for the lead turns out to be the exact same at the end of the day. So again, we'll see how that shakes out. This was a weekend, the last place battle, the fact that it played out as dramatically as it did with Eric Almirola over Justin Haley was a nice turnaround from, I think, what honestly was kind of a sad couple of first last place battles in both the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series. We'll definitely talk about both of these races at the same time here. And we'll do trivia here tonight for those of you tuning in here at the same time. So we'll jump into that there too. Thank you so much, Beast of Metal, for your super chat there. I found McDowell's comments about benefiting from the race not being broken up by stage yellows to be interesting. Elliott's interviews seem to imply the same thing, and others give that vibe too. Very good point. Again, and I think I usually was kind of just thinking of it just in terms of just not having cautions for anything. But you're right. Yeah, not having the stage cautions at all, I think really made this feel like a much more traditional race. Now, obviously, we've had races in the past, even on the ovals. Chicagoland comes to mind, where they had a whole streak of races where nobody even fell out of the event. And yet everybody within about 5 laps of the leader, like we saw at Richmond just not too long ago there. But I still think a race like that can be compelling. And I think it's nice that, you have a different racecraft from one track to the next. I think that road courses can lend themselves to this kind of competition. I thought the Sears Point race, the way it played out, was interesting in its own right, despite how dominant Truex was in that event. You still had some competition that was happening at the same time and drivers trying to figure things out. And you still saw, when somebody had a bad pit stop, that was going to drop them out of contention there. And you just couldn't gamble on there being a caution. I think the debate now going forward, and we talked about, switching the track back to the oval, and I still think that's something they should do, because I think we're all curious at the very least what this car could do on the road courses, or what this, excuse me, not on the road course. We've seen that, what this car can do on the actual traditional IndyCar oval. I think that would be great to see, because it's been so long since, it feels like it's been more than 3 years now, 4 years since we had that one with Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin, where Hamlin blew a tire. So much has changed in that short of a period of time. It would have been interesting to see how all of that would have played out there at the same time. But we'll see how that goes. But the other debate, is going to have to be with having stage cautions at any of these races. Frankly, I think that would be a good thing to get rid of, because look, you could, I not, as much as I'm not crazy about stage points, there's not to say that you can't award these points and then still have the race continue. I think that there's been a lot of comments, a lot of videos talking about how long the stage cautions tend to be and how much of the competition that really takes up. I think that, NASCAR fell in love with cautions a little bit too much. But again, it's not a sport that's entirely about restarts. It's a sport that is about strategy and different tracks that race differently. Not every track is going to be Daytona. Not every track is going to be Bristol. Not every track is going to be Sears Point or Watkins Glen. They're all different in their own ways. And I think getting used to this different racecraft is another thing that makes NASCAR special. is running these different tracks that require different disciplines, as well as different degrees of what control the pit crew and the crew chief can have over the outcome of the event. So I think if you eliminate those stage cautions and allow that culture of kind of, a race strategy to play out, I think that's another thing that you can market your sport with. I think that, the marketing has been too much towards restarts and just saying, look, we don't need to follow Formula One in that respect, where it's the initial start and then, whoever is running where, that's just where they're going to run unless something really crazy happens. I think if you have a situation where you can have really compelling racing, you can have long green flag runs. And it really shows again how important of a role the broadcast plays in this. That, if that becomes more normalized, if it becomes more normal that you have long green flag runs, the broadcast is going to adjust to that, which I felt they did a very good job of in this one too. Even when you had other drivers up front, like, Austin Dillon or Denny Hamlin that were on a different strategy, you knew the lead battle was going to come back to these other cars that were further back. And so the camera would focus on them and who was going to be positioned ahead of who when those other cars pitted. I thought they did a fine job of that today too. So again, this is why I'm so critical about these broadcasts. And again, I'm not going to be, I don't complain about it to complain about it. If there's going to be improvement, I'm absolutely going to point it out, and I'm going to applaud them for it because I want them to keep doing it. That's I think the important thing. So not that I think they're watching the show, because I'm sure they're not, but I think that it's nice to see it going that direction. I think they're moving the right way, and it shows that you can make these changes during the season, during this portion. I mean, it's only been a couple of months since NBC took over this portion of the schedule, and they've already made these small, again, they're not big changes, but they're small but very important changes that really kind of bring you into the sport. I think if Fox had broadcasted this race, you probably wouldn't have got the exact same experience. It probably would have played out more like COTA did earlier this year, before all the late race restarts. Like, you really kind of had to understand all the other things that are happening and all the other drivers that are involved in this. And I think that the network and the sport did a fine job promoting this one with all the international talent in there to a certain extent. I do think, I think that there's an attitude towards, ignorance on a topic that I think still needs to change a little bit. I saw Dale Jr. on his podcast. They were kind of joking about Kamui Kobayashi and, making, confusion with the hot dog eating champion. And it's like, okay, I think that was a little over the line. Like, I don't like being the person that's like, hypersensitive about things. It's not so much like on the surface level of it, but more like, look, if you don't know who the guy is, like, do the research and really try to understand it. And this is something I applied to myself too. I mean, and I've had examples of this weekend as well. I mean, really on last week's show when I couldn't get Brody Kostecki's name right. And it's like, okay, well, shoot, I should really do the research on this guy. But when I'm not getting the name right, I'm not going to be joking about it and say, oh, it's like, is it Matthew Broderick or something, or, ridiculing the guy or trying to, try to soft pedal my ignorance. It's like, look, if I don't know something, I need to do the homework. And, that's what I've been really trying to do this week. And so I was very much excited to see Kostecki get up there and compete with Van Gisbergen. And that's the great thing. Again, I grew up at a time where the only thing that was cooler than knowing something was learning something. And you shouldn't want to disincentivize people from learning. So that's why I don't want to be too critical of Junior's aspect from it there, from the podcast this week. And I'm sure in between the podcast and now, he was doing a lot of research and he was very excited about Kobayashi competing in this race here too. And I'll apply this also to earlier this week in the Truck Series race of the T-Sport deal there too. I was very outspoken on that the night of, where, I was listening to the TV broadcast, and yes, I actually did hear when Jamie Little brought up, the truck looks like a monster truck, and kind of angling that into a discussion of T-Sport. But I liked that the radio broadcast had that whole produced segment, which apparently, and again, we had a great discussion of this on social media, apparently that is part of a paid deal there with a radio broadcast, that they're going to have a segment where you talk to whoever's involved in the actual company and hearing from them. And of course, this being a connection directly with the Thor Sport team, why it's sponsoring the number 66 in the show. Again, it's good. I like that they kind of went more in depth into it, because I still feel like a lot of these races these days, the attitude has been to not really talk about the sponsors that are in the race, or to not describe the cars with the sponsorship. Says, oh, here's so-and-so in the Citgo car, or here's so-and-so in this sponsor's car, or anything like that. But I do think that, and again, in the same spirit as today's at the NBC thing, I'm glad that Jamie Little did bring up, in that context, did bring up the title sponsor and made at least some observation of it. I still maintain to a degree that MRN handled it better by having an actual segment and kind of explaining it a bit more, that it was a bit more professional. But again, in terms of progress and trying to get there and trying to kind of improve, I do consider that to be an improvement. That said, though, not that far after the broadcast, a little bit later into it during the early laps, I really just wasn't enjoying listening to the play-by-play from FS1 in the Truck Series race. And I did listen to just the radio broadcast, the rest of it. And I don't like doing that, because I think that it encourages the sense that a TV broadcast is a redundancy, and that people should just listen to the radio, and that, you know, especially with this discussion about AI-generated commentary in golf and tennis, you know, who's to say that wouldn't come into racing at some point? I think that would be terrible, you know, because there's a long and proud tradition in all of sports. I wouldn't want to see it in any sport, but especially in motorsports. You know, listening to Alan Bestwick on the PA system in this Indy weekend here, you know, I think that attitude could get embraced a little bit too easily, and kind of lackluster broadcasts are kind of a way that kind of lead into that. So I felt that was really the one that kind of stood out from the weekend. But again, I will concede, and again, I don't, you know, in the interest, because I do apply this to myself at the same time. Yeah, I kind of jumped the gun there with the T-Sport deal there, and they did at least attempt to bring up the sponsorship in the broadcast. And that's why I retweeted it when it was brought up there at the same time, because I want to make sure the original post got a lot of likes on there, but I didn't want to start a freight train where it's like, look, you know, they're doing something that they aren't doing. So I'm glad that was brought up there, and I appreciate the discussion on that at the same time there too. But I will say that, yeah, the broadcast still needs to improve in other ways. It's good that they're improving in that sense. Maybe everything else will kind of pick up from there. So I'm not willing to really kind of give up on FS1's broadcast here for the rest of the Truck Series season. Hopefully we see some improvement from there. But man, you know, there's just a lot they need to work on. And I think a broadcast like today is a perfect example of that at the same time. So let's get into the Xfinity Series race here at the same time. And again, any other questions you guys have from this weekend, I'll definitely jump into that there at the same time. An unfortunate situation in last place battle there on the Xfinity race. Brad Perez with a issue with his brakes there. Thankfully, it didn't result in any kind of serious contact or anything that would have wiped out a car, especially since the fact that team didn't have a primary sponsor this week. But Perez, with his first career last place finish, only the second time in both his truck and Xfinity starts that he hasn't finished the race on the lead lap. The only other time was his truck race at Martinsville, which was a complete mess, because that was the one that was run with wet weather tires. Stephen Malozzi had issues as well in that race with the battery issue. Everybody was having problems in that event there. But in this time around here, did the first last car article on him there. We did not have the logo on his car this week, so there was no connection there. Would have, you know, loved to help him out if I could have on that, but our ad budget is kind of tapped out for this moment here at the moment. But you know, I'm glad he was able to get out of the car. There wasn't anything more serious than that, because by that point of the race, we had the issue with the Hulu broadcast there, and it was looped at lap 18. So I was just listening to the radio, not really by choice, but pretty much the only way I could really kind of track it at that time. But it seemed like Ty Gibbs pretty much cruised from that point. But the race was not without its series of drama as well. Andre Castro, another person that's very much a big fan of the site here, and certainly a supporter of his as well. Glad to see him qualify again in Jesse Iwuji Motorsports, a team that we've seen very little of this year, that it had to scale back to a part-time schedule. I mean, just really very infrequent races. Castro qualified the car into Chicago, qualified the car on speed again in this race, a very different track. I really think people need to be talking about this kid a lot more, because I think he's one to watch. And if they get a car that can hold together for him, I think he can really get a good finish out there. Unfortunately, his first two starts, both bottom five finishes. This time, much like with Brad Perez, at least not an accident in this situation here, but still resulting in a situation with suspension. I believe a track bar issue on the number 34, dropping him out in the 36th spot. Ross Chastain stuck between them in a suspension issue as well. Joe Graff Jr. and Chandler Smith rounding out the bottom 5. Smith actually pulled behind the wall right before the race ended, at least pretty close to it there. So that did not end up having a factor in last place, but certainly could have been if the attrition was just a little bit lighter. But that was not the situation there too. But Ty Gibbs winning that race there over Sam Mayer. AJ Allmendinger in third, had a much better day in the Xfinity car. Austin Hill in fourth, coming back from left front fender damage on his car. Justin Allgaier rounding out the top 5. Cole Custer, Parker Kligerman, Sheldon Creed, Kaz Gralla, and Brett Moffitt rounding out your top 10 in the Xfinity Series race. Good to see Sage Karam get another good run out there, and Alex Labay as well. As Tommy Joe Martins retweeted earlier today, I mean, both world-class road course drivers, and would have to agree, these are both drivers that have jumped through multiple teams. And yet the one thing that doesn't seem to change is their consistent performance, even when both of them have rather limited sponsorship, especially Labay as Perez's teammate. The 35 also had very limited backing here. But Labay with a fine 11th place finish just on the outside of a top 10. And Sage Karam, I mean, my goodness, this third different team that he's driven for, really since he had that near victory at Road America, and he was driving for Sam Hunt Racing, got passed towards the very end of the race, still ended up with a top 5. In a career best, he comes over to Michigan. He drives for Carl Long's team. Yes, they're back in the order, a 25th place finish, but a second straight 25th place finish for that team after Dexter Stacy's run at Road America, one with very limited sponsorship, and they managed to stay on the lead lap late enough that they were actually able to lead a lap during the last round of green flag stops. That is no small accomplishment. You can't run 6-7 laps down at the beginning of the race and still do that. So that shows how much speed that Karam had in that race. And then in this one on top of it, in a race where only 2 of the 3 Alpha Prime cars get out there, Sage Karam gets another great run out there. I mean, obviously this track much more connected to his background in IndyCar racing, this being, of course, a double weekend with the open wheel stars out there. And Scott Dixon, congratulations to him on his spin and win earlier on Saturday. But Karam with a fine 15th place finish there, that definitely needs more attention. I think that if he gets a steadier ride, at least to cover all the road courses and then maybe expand it from there, who's to know if he can get any more stability under him. I certainly hope for the same for Alex Labay as well. Labay has a bit more experience with a full-time effort there. And certainly with Mario Gosselin's team, they're keeping a pretty close eye on him, even with the other good runs he's had driving for teams like the Emerling Gase effort, like RSS Racing. Still a good performance there, too. Other drivers in the top 20, Josh Bilicki, Jeremy Clements, Kyle Weatherman. Weatherman's car with a lot of mud on the nose of it there, kicked up from Ty Gibbs' car, but still finishing in the top 20 there with very limited sponsorship. Seemed like that car was even uncovered on pit road for a lot of that lightning hold there earlier in the Xfinity Series race. But this one here, I can't really comment too much on the racing itself. I just saw the highlight reel of a couple of moments from the race there. It seemed like it was pretty competitive. I know the Xfinity Series tends to be the one that kind of steals the show each week, although I think, again, if it was anything close to what we saw in the Cup Series race today, I think that would be worth mentioning at the same time. Further back, I'm a little troubled by mentioning the RSS team. We've seen them run on sponsored cars before, but this time around the 39 car, the flagship entry with the CRMR roofing sponsorship, to not see them with a sponsor on that car is a bit eye-opening, especially for Indianapolis. Used to be running the races on the oval. This was one of the ones that the teams really circled in terms of getting a big draw, not just from the capacity of the track, but the prestige of the race as well. I think that's another thing that is a bit eye-opening there too. So hopefully things are going okay over at the RSS team. That's definitely one of the programs, along with Jesse Iwuji and Emerling Gase and a lot of these other smaller organizations there that we usually keep a pretty close eye on from one week to the next there too. Another team that really performed well, in spite of losing some spots in the early laps by getting nerfed out of the groove there, Preston Pardus, qualifying his family's team. I was glad they ran the red, white, and blue car again from Chicago. I thought that was a beautiful-looking car We didn't get to see enough of when that race was cut short. So I'm glad that they got back out there and ran in the 24th spot, finishing on the lead lap. So kudos to Pardis on that as well. I'm sure they were hoping for an even better run out there, but the Spec Miata guys really seem to have kind of an interesting advantage here at a track much like the Indy Grand Prix circuit there. So the one benefit to seeing some competition out there. Kind of as an aside, I kind of want to talk about this too. I miss the day where you have YouTube videos and people can post video comments to YouTube. I would really like it if they had something like that. I mean, nowadays you can still post responses to videos, but you don't get to have them listed underneath it. I guess maybe the system got abused or something back then. But I was very much intrigued by David Land's video posted earlier this week about bringing the Brickyard 400 back. And I think this is probably as good of a transition as any to kind of discuss that. I liked a lot of the suggestions in there. If you haven't seen it yet, I don't really want to spoil too much of it. But basically it was, I guess I'm going to have to kind of go into at least a couple of the points of it. There's a lot in there that I think it would be really interesting to make the race more special. I think the first point of departure I would have kind of with his theme is I think that would require not having the Xfinity Series run at Indianapolis. I think the exclusivity that made the Brickyard 400 special is that only the Cup guys could race there, and that it had that level of mystique. So you had the Xfinity Series join the Truck Series at IRP, and both would put on fantastic shows right up to the point that they stopped running there. You figure that's where Jason Leffler won his first race for Toyota, years ago, was at IRP in an Xfinity Series race. I think they would put on a wonderful show there, and I think it would be a great lead-in to the Brickyard. I think that NASCAR weekend should be entirely about the Cup Series there, and I think it should point out, especially when you have all these other series that run on different circuits, where you have the Xfinity and trucks at a place like COTA, that is a current Formula One track. It's having Indy have its prestige. I agree very much with David about bringing back the prestige of the Brickyard 400. I think that's one of the reasons that it was agreed to be a crown jewel for a period of time. And I think was a reason that that luster kind of fell off, was bringing these other series out there. And the fact that a lot of those series races weren't very good because this was still during a time where you had Cup Series guys dominate. I mean, one of the first Busch Series races there was dominated by Kyle Busch and Ryan Blaney. And yes, it was at a time where Blaney really wasn't in the Cup Series yet, but it was with a high-powered Penske Racing entry, and everybody else is racing for whatever they can get. I think that having the Cup Series be the focus is the best way to do it. And again, if there is some rub-off from the traditions of the Indy 500 itself, whether it's a 33-car grid, whether it's multiple rounds of qualifying and having those dramatic moments where somebody like earns the pole and kind of bring that in, I don't see anything against that. I know that, and especially hearing it from him as an open wheel fan, I think that it's nice that that concession is there as well. I think that would be a nice thing to kind of build off from. Again, definitely check out his video if you haven't seen it yet after the show here. I think that he has a lot of interesting points, but that would probably be the biggest thing I would separate there, is not have the Xfinity Series be part of that weekend. Instead, just put them back at IRP, because I think that will make the Cup Series race at the Brickyard feel more exclusive and still retain that special aspect to it, because you don't just let anybody run there. I know other series have run there, and other series still could run there as part of a combination weekend. But I think if you have other ideas that he has in there, like heat races and so forth, and qualifying rounds and last chance qualifiers, that's enough. I mean, for me as a ticket buyer, that would be enough. For me as a media member, that would be enough. It still lets IRP itself be special. You would have, imagine the stacked up weekend there where you have trucks, you add Xfinity, and you still have the ARCA series there too. I think you'd have a tremendous buy for that venue too. So I think that would be kind of the direction I would go on that at the same time. To IRP, let me definitely talk about the dominant performance by Ty Majeski. Congratulations on him pulling off a victory to begin the playoffs there. Congratulations to him, leading 179 of the 200 laps there, and pulling off a very tasteful Polish victory lap there at the end. Of course, Majeski famously being from Wisconsin, being part of the Kawicki driver development program. I'm sure it was particularly meaningful for him to get his first Truck Series win at Bristol last year and being able to do the Polish victory lap. I know he got booed a bit last year when he didn't do a big, engine tearing, tire tearing burnout out there. I think it's worth looking at, again, drivers that don't always do that and show a little bit more respect for the equipment, and perhaps, especially in the case of the Truck Series, not wanting to ignite those rear mud flaps and start a fire like we've seen out of John Hunter Nemechek in the Xfinity Series or Zane Smith in the Truck Series. I think that's still a worthy concern, really, there at the same time. But Majeski's a guy that impresses me. I was really hoping he'd be able to pull off the Truck Championship last year. I was definitely torn on that because I really liked Majeski's story, and I like Zane Smith at the same time because I have a friend on the pit crew there of the 38 truck, so I was definitely torn between them. I'm glad it worked out that one of them was able to win at Phoenix last year. But now with Zane Smith having his championship, I'd love it if Majeski finished off this year and was able to pull off that title there. I think he's more than put himself in position to be a favorite for the championship already. Certainly winning the first race of the playoffs will put you in a good position at least to the next round. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be easy, though. I mean, Zane's just as good as ever. Carson Hocevar has found his footing. Who's to say that Grant Enfinger can't get his feet back under him again after he won this race last year and now has already won at Gateway this year? That's going to be really exciting, and we'll see how that shakes out. Shane Van Gisbergen began his weekend in that Truck Series race, finished in the 19th spot, expressed that he was a little disappointed that he got lapped towards the end. Indeed, he was in the lucky dog spot when the race did finish under the green flag there. But again, I think a fine performance out of him with a very different racecraft, very different vehicles, very different track, of course, running on an oval. But I think he did a fine job. He didn't seem to really get in any trouble out there. So kudos to him at the same time. The flip side of this, too, the other big bit of last car history that happened from this weekend, and this ended up being kind of my big focus of Friday night here, was that of Greg Van Alst scoring his first last-place finish in his Truck Series debut, following up with his first two last-place finishes in both of his first Xfinity Series races. And then a question, of course, became who was the last driver to finish last in both his Xfinity and Truck Series debuts. It was actually very recent. It was Natalie Decker just in 2021, first in her Truck Series debut on the Daytona Oval, and then at the Daytona Road Course the following year, if not 2 years later. So it was very much in close context there. And then before that, Perry Tripp going very much further back into the Xfinity and Truck Series history there. One of those was driving for Jim Rosenblum in the Truck Series, famously the team owner for Giacomo Giacomo's entry in the Cup Series years ago. There may be something more coming together on that on this channel here at the same time, so that might not be the only time you'll hear from Mr. Rosenblum coming up here on the channel. Those of you in the Patreon probably already know about that from some notes there too. But unfortunately for Greg Van Alst, I'm glad that at least he has that ride for the rest of this season. So hopefully he can get some races where he's not only finishing the race, but finish the race under power, hopefully get some lead lap finishes and get his confidence back out there. I think that would be great. It's already been such a difficult year for him. I mean, it started so promising with the ARCA 200 victory, having to curtail his ARCA schedule this year. It was good to see him back out in the ARCA race and getting a good finish. But then the first two Xfinity races not going very well. Just situations out of his control, out of the team's control, really, too. Just things that just happen out there. But hopefully things turn around for him at the same time. Also for the Randy Young team, the 20 team out there, has had all kinds of problems. Had two other last place runs with Ed Jones and Stephen Parsons. A lot of races they didn't have sponsorship, so I'm certainly sure they're excited to have his CB Fabricating sponsorship on board on the number 20. But we'll see how things shake out from there. Colby Howard, and next to last there, Tyler Ankrum, Spencer Boyd, and Dean Thompson rounding at the bottom five. Dean Thompson still trying to shake off some of the bad luck he's had through a lot of this year as well for him in the Tricon Garage effort. Haley Deegan being involved in a couple of those incidents as well as the one that had collected Greg Van Alst. Deegan ends up in the 31st spot. She's really had a bad stretch of races here this year to certainly talk about at the same time. Looking out through the rest of the field here, Again, a lot of the same figures up front there, including, I would say, Raja Karuth, who, especially since Darlington, has really put together some very consistent runs, really threatening for his first victory. This was another perfect example of that. Him starting fourth and finishing seventh in this race, well within the lead battle there, right behind William Sawalich as well, who has had some great runs with the Tricon Garage effort there in sixth. So some new faces kind of becoming a bit more established there at the same time. So, and again, great. I thought a pretty solid Truck Series race. Quite a few more accidents, I think, that we had from last year, but thankfully not exactly the same controversy like we saw out of Carson Hocevar last year, his wreck with Colby Howard. In this case here, at least you had at least a pretty competitive battle throughout the field, although Majeski seemed to have this one pretty well in his back pocket. It still seemed like everybody else was being able to climb back up there. Would also be remiss to not mention the other big name that ended up popping into the top 10. We actually had a few unusual names in the lineup. Lane Riggs returning to the scene of his Truck Series debut last year, where I believe he was 7th place in that race, driving for the Halmar Friesen effort, comes back and finishes in the 3rd spot there with the Spire Motorsports effort. Yes, that's the same team that we have seen with Kyle Larson and Alex Bowman and other drivers run, but you still got to get the thing out there and get the best run you can get. And he had a very fine showing out there. Really seemed like he was the only driver that could really run the inside line and was gaining a lot of ground there at the end. I thought he had a really good shot at getting Christian Eckes there for second at very least. But still, a fantastic run for him. Hopefully we see many more starts out of him. I'm surprised we haven't really seen that many starts out of him this year after the performance that he had last season. I don't know if that was just a reorganization at the Halmar team where they haven't really run that second truck this much this year. Obviously, the Halmar team had a lot of problems in this race here with Stewart going behind the wall very early on with some kind of mechanical issue that dropped him about 14 laps down. But still, wherever he lands, if they can kind of make a steady ride there and build a team around him, I think they're going to have a heck of a wheelman there to work with there at the same time. So, yeah, I mean, really, I think pretty solid weekend in general in racing here. I didn't really watch the ARCA or the IndyCar races this weekend, but I hear definitely some good storylines from those as well. I will say I'm very excited about the Kyle Larson deal for next year. Of course, worst kept secret, the news of Larson doing double duty in both the Coke 600 and the Indy 500 has been known for quite a long time. But seeing the paint schemes rolled out today was a very pleasant surprise, I gotta say. I think we all expected there was going to be a blue and white car, like his Cup car, the Ricky Hendrick paint scheme. But I was very struck by the update that they did to both of the schemes. The ad of the, what is it, the papaya orange that the McLaren team, the Arrow McLaren team does in IndyCar. My God, that looked fantastic. That made that number 5 car look so much better than it does on a week-to-week basis. And I know they run the blue and red because that's the traditional color that they had with Ricky Hendrick and Brian Vickers and so many others over the years. But I love that car. I mean, I still maintain that neon orange needs to be in the Hall of Fame because it just makes any paint scheme so much better. I bought a shirt from Daniel Dye's team that has the number 43, like his 43 truck on it. And on the back of it, it has like his truck and the number is that color. And it just pops so beautifully, even on a shirt. So when you see it on like a car in person, like seeing it on TV is one thing, but when you see it in person, I imagine that one just looks really nice. And it's not too much either. Like, you know, they could have even gone even more with it and kind of done a stripe over the front of the car because it looked like they tried to kind of match the same paint scheme as the Indy car, which is a wonderful thing. We haven't seen this with drivers that have attempted the double before, whether it was Tony Stewart or John Andretti, before in the past. I think this is a really pretty cool idea. And, you know, as much as this is, you know, a big team doing big team things, I think it's a wonderful crossover. And I know a lot of people have been complaining about how it looks like Scott Dixon's car. I would still say it looks different enough that it, you know, the roll hoop's a different color, you know, it's using similar colors to it. But again, I think it's not as much like that. It's different enough. There's kind of a nice transition that Dixon's car has with kind of that granular kind of fade on there on the PNC bank thing. Maybe from a distance, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but that's what the spotters get paid the money for. But I actually like Larson's car better. I think it looks really, really nice. And I think the Cup car looks really good. I was very struck by how nice that came together, and I wouldn't mind if that became the regular scheme. I seriously doubt that's going to happen because, of course, they're doing this as a crossover just for that event. But I think it's so much better than what they run now. It looks gorgeous. And I've always been outspoken about a paint scheme that uses white in the scheme. I think Larson's has been pretty good. We've run it. Now he's run it for these last few years. But man, just adding that fluorescent orange on there, it just hits just right. And I know I sound like I'm making too much out of this. But again, I'm such a snob when it comes to paint schemes here. I think it looks incredible. It looked great. So hopefully, and we'll see how things go on that. And it makes me that much more excited about next year and the potential for what may happen there between those two events and how he does there. So that'll be certainly exciting to track at the same time. Alrighty. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Fernando Alonso failed to qualify in McLaren. You're right to bring that up. No tires, just gas. Nothing is guaranteed. As well, it should be. Again, that's totally fine. And it's not guaranteed at all. But we know at least you're going to get some practice laps in it. Or certainly hope we had more than Alonso did that year when that happened. But that's going to be really interesting to see at the same time there too. So yeah, nothing's guaranteed, but that's going to be quite the story. Let's see. I think that's most of what I have on hand. Do I have any other notes from last week? I feel like I discussed the Noah Gragson story enough on last week's show. I know we have the new news this week that now he's asked to be released from the number 42. We've seen Mike Rockenfeller in the car today and actually had, I think, kind of a decent run in the 42 there. And we're going to see him in the car again next week at Watkins Glen. What happens from there, I think, is going to be intriguing, whether it's Daytona and onward. I don't see them giving somebody their debut at Daytona, given the fact that it's a playoff cutoff. They're probably going to put somebody like, a Josh Berry in there, I would imagine. Although the Berry thing, I'm kind of surprised Berry was brought in there at Michigan because, of course, you have the double manufacturer issue here because you got Legacy on the one hand switching to Toyota, and then you got Josh Berry signing to drive, replacing Harvick in the Ford next year. So I imagine it's just manufacturer soup from there. I mean, where do you untangle the agreements that figure out one driver or the other? But I think the other trade-off is here for Daytona is they don't want to have somebody that's going to be inexperienced, that's going to cause, any kind of problems out there. I know Brett Bodine is involved in a lot of driver selections that come up or driver approval process. This came up kind of in the Travis McCullough situation at Sears Point last year. But that would be the other story that's going to be interesting coming up there. As for Gragson, yeah, I mean, I'm sure he'll be coming back. It's just a matter of where and how. He's got a lot of talent. I know he has his share of detractors. I know there's other stuff that, not just this latest story, but anything else that people can bring up one way or the other there. But, again, depending, it's going to be real gut check time as to how serious he's going to be about staying competitive in NASCAR, wherever that's going to be. And, we're going to have to find out. So, whether it's going to be later this year with somebody else, or it's going to be another year later, or it's going to be in a different series, we'll see. He's not the first person to go through this. I'm not just talking about Kyle Larson, thinking back to Kurt Busch or anybody else out there. There have been drivers that have had to go through other steps, and I think that'll be interesting. But, the rumors are all out there. Whether we're going to start seeing Toyota development drivers in the 42 later this year, especially given how good John Hunter Nemechek's been in the Xfinity Series. I'm glad that he is getting talked about more. I still don't think that the media takes him very seriously in the Xfinity Series championship, and I don't know what more the man needs to do. I know he does. I'm not expecting everybody to be a fan of him. I get the aggression and the toes he stepped on over the years, and we've heard very similar things with Ty Gibbs over the years, and I guess that's probably where all that plays in with them being teammates, at least part-time, in Joe Gibbs racing. But, the talent's there, folks. If John Hunter is going to get back in there and get with some better backing and end up with a better ride than he had when he drove for Front Row, even with Front Row being the winners today, unofficially, again, pending the results of post-race inspection, I think that's going to be one thing to see at the same time. So we'll see. Whether it's, I'll be very interested to see who they're going to put in the car at Daytona, because that's going to be a very unusual situation. And I think they're going to want to have a really experienced driver in there that they're not going to have to worry about. I seriously doubt it's going to be like a Shane Van Gisbergen kind of thing or something like that. I think that might be a bridge too far, especially when we've seen in the past with development deals for Cup drivers to run super speedways, traditionally running like an ARCA race or running the fall race at Talladega or something like that. That would kind of be more the speed of that. But and I'm sure Trackhouse themselves are not going to really want to let him go, especially after a top 10 finish today. I think whether or not it's going to be a drive for a different team, even a team that needs a driver, I think that's going to be a different circumstance there too. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. Let's see. 23 is now outside the owner playoff, Spencer Sandlin. Interesting. That's another one to kind of look at too. Let's see. Yeah, Chase Elliott will be interesting. I'm just kind of looking over some of the comments here a little bit earlier too. Yeah, I was interested that the Hulu issue was kind of more of a problem for everybody else too, but I guess that was kind of the situation. But yeah. So we'll do it. We'll go ahead and do some trivia questions here at the same time. Let me kind of bring it back down here. Is Van Gisbergen driving at Watkins Glen next week? I don't know. I imagine he probably would. I know it was interesting in the broadcast today when they were talking about the different adjustments they had to make to the car for the new safety regulations since Chicago. I guess were put in place for the Atlanta race. So, I mean, they have that. I imagine, the car didn't look too beat up from this race, had a tire mark on the door, and that seemed to be about it. I'm sure if they could kind of get it turned around. I mean, it's a quicker turnaround, of course. They got to get, ready next week. I don't know. I guess we'll find out what we're going to have with the deals here, too. All right. Let's see here. I kind of want to check out. Okay, good. We got interviews with the road course specialist here at the same time, so that's good to see. Kind of pull up Pockrass's page at the same time. Updated race report. I don't know what the update is. Why was he stopped on pit lane? I still don't know exactly what happened with Almirola. I kind of want to find out what the situation was. Maybe he ran out of fuel? Okay, Almirola apparently did tweet that he ran out of fuel. Oh my goodness. Wow. And yeah, it's a 1 lap difference between Almirola and Haley. So he must have happened. Yeah, 79 laps complete. He must have broken down with 3 laps to go, and it still was a factor there. That's so unusual. I mean, that pit road is so long. I could see if you run out of fuel and you can't get to your stall. In fact, he stalled right next to McDowell's stall and short of the line, which really made that a different situation there. But it was just enough. It was just enough to be the difference there. I'm seeing unofficial results here, still showing McDowell the leader, the winner, and Almirola showing last with a 1 lap difference over Justin Haley. So we'll see what else happens there. Yeah, I'm not seeing a call on inspection yet. I saw a question about show and tell. I do have something for show and tell. I did not bring it up here, but it's on that shelf behind me. I may do the load screen really quick. And but let me do the categories first so you guys can pick your category for trivia, and then we'll just do that for the show tonight. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Yeah, exciting day. No shortage of storylines. And again, I really enjoyed these last couple weeks in particular. Pocono and Michigan felt very positive after those races, and I'm glad that positivity seems to have extended into this race too. And I'd like to see that the playoffs start off on a similar note here. So Watkins Glen should be dramatic. Our good buddy Charlie Birch is getting ready out there to photograph that race out there and have a good time. So that'll be good to see. Yeah, so that'll definitely be pretty big coming up. So once again, the categories here are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So again, late 90s Tiger Electronics deal here. Here the categories again are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are your categories there. So definitely mention which categories you'd like, and we'll do some questions to wrap up. If you have any other questions from this race weekend you want me to jump into, we can do that at the same time. And yeah, we'll go for that. So let me do the load screen. I will be right back, and we will finish up the show. So stay tuned, folks. Okay, let me bring the mic back over here again. See Joey Hand back in a Rick Ware car. That would be pretty cool. Let's see. Okay, you guys, let's see. I see a few for tracks, a few for wild card. We'll let a few more votes come up here. Before we get started with that trivia portion, I'll give you an update on videos for this channel. So the first big thing. Big thanks to those of you in the Patreon who've already checked out my latest video, which is the biography on Chuck Bown. Very pleased with how that one came out. Seems like the response has been pretty good so far. That was posted in the Patreon last week. It will go public this Tuesday on my YouTube channel, this channel right here. So definitely keep an eye out for your inbox there when that goes public if you haven't seen it already. If you are in the $5 or up levels of the Patreon, or you're interested in joining, we did get a couple new members join this last week here. Check out patreon.com/LascaronBrock, and you can watch it tonight right after the show. The video is about an hour in length, so that one's ready. At the moment here, the next two videos I have are already recorded. One of those is the next Field Fillers episode, which is going to be on Mach 1 Incorporated. The other one is the next episode of 500 Days on the spring race at Darlington. I've basically been kind of producing them side to side. Whichever one of those is done first is going to be the next release. I think I'm kind of leaning towards Field Fillers, towards being the next one. I think that one might come together quicker, but I could be wrong. So whichever one it is, those are going to be the next ones in the works. So I have that going here, and I have a couple other scripts that are kind of coming together in the meantime. Been in touch with our good buddy Brian Hallman at the BRH Racing Archives, who's provided some great material on that. And and I think those are going to be, those other videos are probably going to work out to be about 45 minutes to an hour in length. So I'm really kind of working on getting some more content here. I was also asked about the Derek Cope book last week. I don't remember if I gave an update on that because I know that show ran kind of long. So on that note there, I am still in the process of getting the cover illustration finished. Ryan Daly has done a fine job with that. I've been kind of still working on getting kind of the last details on that kind of worked out and kind of getting the credits put on there and making sure it looks right. And once that's set up there, I should be able to kind of start getting in touch with getting some reviews, some initial reviews for the book, and kind of working some connections on that. So that'll be kind of the next phase of it. And once we start getting some kind of endorsement quotes on that, we'll be able to kind of figure out a release date. I'd still like to get it done get it released this winter if I can, at the very latest. But again, I don't have a firm release date yet on that, but it is coming together. Again, we've had a couple different hoops to jump through here, but we had some important benchmarks reached by both the cover illustration being completed, as well as locking in the title, which is going to be Cope, just straightforward, much like the JD book there. So we're going to have some more updates on that. An audio book recorded by myself has been done already. I still need to clip out the outtakes and get that ready for uploading as well. I'm kind of working on that in between the videos. And the release date for that will be announced pretty soon. I'd like to release it at the same time as the book. I think that should be possible. We'll see how all that shakes out. But very exciting to kind of get a lot more coming up here at the same time. Ooh, Cash Kumar, Enfinger would be interesting. Yeah. He did do the road course over at Sears Point, of course, and that was his Cup debut. I wonder if he'd do Daytona, because he's run the truck races at Daytona. Maybe that would work out. So yeah, a lot more that's coming up here at the same time. Should be very exciting. Oh, Beast of Metal, yeah. Thank you for mentioning the Minnesota Vikings thing. That's excellent. I'm gonna release mine in the morning. I think he's releasing his in the evening, so I don't think there's gonna be a problem with that. Yeah, this one, just because it turned out to be a week after I posted it in the Patreon, I think when the Patreon release was with episode 2 of that. He's done a very good job of that. John Boyce, I was very impressed with his Atlanta Falcons video, and the Minnesota Vikings one has been good so far too. So yeah, more content coming up here on the channel in very short order here, and yeah, the book is also in the works too. So yeah, we're just kind of getting ready to whatever the next one will be finished, and I'll be very, very excited to see what people think of the Chuck Bound video. I really enjoyed putting it together. There's a ton of pictures in there from Brian Hallman. Those of you who've seen it in the Patreon, you already know. So we'll get that out very, very soon there too. I can't do Daytona because trucks are in Milwaukee. That's a very good point, Mark. Yeah, very true. Very true. So there we go. Alrighty. So let's see here. Where are we with the categories? I see 4 for tracks. I see 4 for wild card. I see 2 for drivers, 1 for pits, it looks like. I see another 1 for wild card down here. I guess we'll do wild card. Looks like that one's just ahead of it here. So we'll do a couple of those. Oh, I have to do show and tell. Yes, we'll do that too. Got sidetracked there with the video updates there. So we'll jump into that. Actually, here, how about this? Let me do the first question for anybody that's waiting for this, and then I'll do show and tell during the responses to the first question. So the first question here, what driver's motto was, "I never won a race, but I never lost a party"? What driver's motto was, "I never won a race, but I never lost a party"? That is the first question. So for show and tell. So I was collecting some research material here for a video I'm working on that's coming up. And it was some old NASCAR scene issues. And among those issues was included this. And I couldn't tell how big this was in the picture. But check this out, folks. Here is a 1989 NASCAR Winston Cup Superstars of NASCAR calendar. And this thing is huge. I think this is, I don't think it's a 17 by 14, or it's pretty big, but a nice traditional garage calendar here. And love the photos in this. Let me show you some of these in here. Bobby Allison to start off the season there. I mean, it's actually a February to February one for the NASCAR season. It's interesting that Bobby Allison's the first one that comes up, of course, as he was recovering from his injury at Pocono the previous year. But it's got the dates for the races. It's got the sponsors, individual ones for this. Fine job with the photography in here. It's got some old Dave Shobut pictures here, as well as other photographers. It doesn't have their first, it just says their first initial but last name. But David Shobut's the first one that I recognize from that list. Here we go. We got your Bill Elliott when he brought in the new Thunderbird for 89 on that. Here you got Davey Allison, of course, the video that NASCAR Man put together just recently. Here, I'll bring that a little bit into the schedule. I like that the sponsors jump on board there, and you got their branding. I almost thought of just hanging this on the wall and just having it be like a time capsule, even though it's obviously a calendar from so long ago. There you go, Jeff Bodine, the Levi Garrett car. You got the other iconic Hendrick Motorsports scheme here. Let's see. Oh, here we go. You got the Levi Garrett branding down there at the bottom. Oh, you have that one, Mark. Oh, right on. There you go. Yeah, this thing's beautiful. They're just kind of bringing this. It's in pretty good shape for the age. Terry Labonte, is that Watkins Glen? No, it's just a fence there in the background. I thought he was on the backstretch of the Glen for a second there, but you got the Banquet Frozen Foods machine there with Junior Johnson. And Budweiser there as well, the other branding. Rusty Wallace, the 89 champion. The Raymond Beetle Blue Max Racing, the Kodiak sponsorship. Actually, the interesting thing, again, you saw the race dates are on here. Of course, in June, if you flip back to that, you got the first race at Sears Point comes up on there. The Banquet Frozen Foods 300, so that kind of ties into that. Let's see, so we got Rusty. Where's the other one here? There we go. We got Ricky Rudd. Talk about road course specialists or drivers that have a lot of win on road courses. The 88 Watkins Glen winner right there. I'm sure that looks more like Wilkesboro in the picture, but the driver who did win that race. So you got August of 89, the month for the Watkins Glen race that season. Let's flip through this here. Phil Parsons, broadcaster, but back then driving the number 55. Last year he drove for the Leo Jackson, Richard Jackson team before they split up. The Crown Gasoline sponsorship. Before that went over to Robbie Moroso for 1990. There you go. Neil Bonnet. Before his injury at Darlington in 1990. That springboarded Dale Jarrett's career. Got Sterling Marlin. This is Last Bro's favorite paint scheme here. The old Sunoco Oldsmobile Cutlass. Number 94 there. I mean, just beautiful pictures. I mean, I don't know how well the camera is doing justice to this. Harry Gant, his first year going to Oldsmobile from the Mach 1 team, switching over to Leo Jackson's team on that one. Of course, you got the Skull Bandit branding down here as well, the December one. Here we go. Brett Bodine. It wouldn't be just talk about field fillers without Brett Bodine. This is a kind of an old school picture. Oh, hang on. There's a little bit of a different look. Maybe not how you'd expect Brett Bodine to look there, but back in his Bud Moore era there. Driving the number 15. I think this is before Morgan Shepherd took over the car in 1990. He had those top 10s in that car. DW switched over to the Lumina there for the Monte Carlo. And I think that's the last one. Yeah, I believe that is. You got the order form for the following year there too. But yeah, so pretty neat. It actually has a entry form for an all expense paid trip for two to the Atlanta Journal 500 right there. So you want to go see the Cup Series finale there in 89. So that would be the, that was one where Mark Martin almost won the championship and had the engine failure and Rusty Wallace and Earnhardt going at it. So yeah, so potentially somebody won that contest there and was in the stands for that race. So there you go. So a little bit of show and tell there on that. Yeah, no Earnhardt. I don't believe Earnhardt was in that. No, you would think. I don't know if they just couldn't get the rights or what. Of course, as Elliott, it mentions him being the champion. But yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, Bobby Allison instead. Allison, Elliott, Davey Allison, Jeff Bodine, Terry Labonte, Rusty Wallace, Ricky Rudd. Makes you wonder how they make these decisions. Phil Parsons. Maybe Earnhardt had his own calendar. Maybe that would be the case. Neil Bonnet, Sterling Marlin, Harry Gant, Brett Bodine, and yeah, it should be Darrell Waltrip. Yeah, he's not even on the back. The back just has a picture of what looks to be, I think, the grid for the 86 Daytona. I mean, you got the Daytona 500, so you know it's the 500, but it's like 86 or 87 Daytona 500. Body styles don't look like they have the super speedway. You got kind of old Thunderbirds like the Cale Yarborough one here. So it might be 85 or 86. There you go. Super Press out of Pottstown, Pennsylvania. was 1989. So yeah, so there you go. It's a little something special there. Might try to scan a couple of those pictures. They came out. They're very very crisp. It doesn't the camera doesn't do it fully justice there for sure. Alrighty. Okay. So let's see. We had the question about what driver's motto was "I never won a race, I never lost a party," and the answer is indeed Del McCoward. A lot of you guys got that. Del McCoward is indeed the correct answer. Yeah, no senior. Very unusual. Very unusual. Could have used that calendar in 2017 and we'll be able to use it again in 2045. Well, hey, all the more reason to hang on to it. Del McCoward is indeed the correct answer. It was good to see a lot of posts about JD McDuffie, certainly this last Friday, on it being, of course, August 11th. I saw there was a lot of activity, especially on Facebook, people sharing models that they were putting together of the number 70 car. So it's good to see a lot of discussion about JD. Still, of course, mindful of that coming into Watkins Glen next week, it being on a different weekend this year. But there you are. Let's see here. Where is it? Here we go. Next question. What NASCAR Winston Cup driver's dad was chief steward for the IndyCar series? So a little bit of NASCAR and IndyCar crossover, pretty appropriate for the weekend. What NASCAR Winston Cup driver's dad was chief steward for the IndyCar series? That is the next question. What NASCAR Winston Cup driver's dad was chief steward for the IndyCar series? Hey there, Death Killer. I saw your comment there earlier. Yeah, I did touch on a couple of videos I'm working on here, but I'll give you the brief recap there so you don't have to cue back there. Next video coming out is this Tuesday. That'll be the Chuck Bound video, which goes public. The next video after that is either going to be the next Rise of the Field fillers on Mach 1 Incorporated, or the next 500 days, which is going to be on the spring race at Darlington, as both of those have been recorded. I have one other script that is almost ready to be recorded, but I need another. I'm trying to complete another interview on it to get that done, and I have another script beyond that that I'm just beginning the research on. So we're looking to kind of set up a series of projects here that can hopefully get done within a narrower time frame. That's the goal. Hi there, Racer 106 2000. Thank you for tuning in. Let me read the question again here for trivia. What NASCAR Winston Cup driver's dad was chief steward for the IndyCar series? Chief steward for the IndyCar series. Let's check this here. Kind of checking that out. Michael McDowell with the ring, right on. Let's see here. Let's see. There it is. Nope, don't see an announcement yet. We don't have to wait all the way till that, but we'll be pretty close. What NASCAR Winston Cup driver's dad was chief steward for the IndyCar series is the question. NASCAR Winston Cup driver's dad was chief steward for the IndyCar series. The answer is Wally Dallenbach's. Wally Dallenbach's. Oh, a few of you got that one. RD Fox 76, Sean Doyle, you got it earlier. Yeah, Sean Doyle, looks like you were the first one. RD Fox 76, Robbie Burns, Maserati 9, Spencer Sandlin. No tires, just gas. Yep, there you go. Wally Dallenbach is correct. Alrighty. Next question. How old was Lee Petty when he first began racing? How old was Lee Petty when he first began racing? All right. How old was Lee Petty when he first began racing is the question. Allgaier in the 42. I mean, yeah. I mean, they probably have their selection from anybody in the Xfinity series. It seems like that would be the thing. But yeah, it would be interesting for the purposes of like just an interesting entry list to get somebody else a chance. I mean, this is the prime opportunity to like kind of give somebody a test there. Hey there, Alex from Brazil. Thank you for tuning in. I saw your comment there earlier. I'm just kind of browsing those too. do. 76 laps without a caution. Yeah. There you go. Good long time, thankfully. How old was Lee Petty when he first began racing? We got guesses for 30 and 21 and 13 and 34 and 40 and 9 and 2,321. Alrighty, here we go. How old was Lee Petty when he first began racing? The answer is 35. 35 is the correct answer. Charles Peterson, you got it. Maserati 9, you got it. There you go. So we got a couple there. 35 is the correct answer. Alrighty. Next question. What branch of the military did Bill France Jr. serve in? Don't look it up. Just try to guess there. What branch of the military did Bill France Jr. serve in? Oh, Charles Peterson, you guessed? Well, hey, you guessed right. 35 is the correct answer to the previous one. What branch of the military did Bill France Jr. serve in is the next question. Check it here again. We kind of look up. Oh, here's the tweet. I'll retweet it here. Eric Almirola posted an hour ago, running P19 and ran out of gas with 2 laps to go. That's the hardest I've ever worked to finish last. Kind of the story of our year, he says. Yeah, I have to say, that was one of the most legitimately exciting last place things I've ever seen. I mean, a race like this creates very much the possibility of something like that happening, but it's very tricky because usually the person at the back is so many laps down that if something happens at the very end, even if it's something like that, like a mechanical issue, it's usually too little too late. But this was just enough at just the right time to run out with 2 to go. Yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it. Interesting. Okay, back to the question here. What branch of the military did Bill France Jr. serve in? We got guesses for, looks like all of them, including the Space Force here. We will see. The answer is the Navy. RD Fox 76. You were the first one on that. The Navy is the correct answer. Charles Peterson Jr., Beast of Metal. You got it. Navy is indeed correct. No tires, just gas. You got it as well. Ultimate 23 Dragon. Alrighty. Kind of want to get your thoughts on this too. When it comes to coming up with subjects of videos, I mean, there's so much NASCAR history out there, but at the same time, I don't want to step on people's toes if they've covered the subject pretty well. I've had this issue before because I know I got requests in the past to do, for example, a race-by-race thing on Richard Petty's Fan Appreciation Tour. But I saw there's another channel, I think it's NASCAR Nick, that did a really good job on it. Actually went race by race, even used the clips from the ESPN broadcast. It's tricky in deciding to do a topic. Generally speaking, unless I can really add a lot more to it, like there's a couple of thoughts I'd have to like add more to it, but that would be that'd be kind of tricky. So, because I don't want it to be too much at, I don't want it to distract too much. I mean, nobody owns any of these stories or anything like that. I mean, it's whoever comes up to it. But yeah, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on anything like that. If it's a topic that somebody's already covered, I guess that's already happened kind of with the 2001 Daytona 500 thing, because I mean, there's so many people who have talked about it. But that was one in particular because I need to find his channel again. He did a very good job on it. So I want to kind of give him a shout out on this. That's weird. I don't think I used anything on that. Where are ya? Where's the list? Is it here? Yeah, NASCAR Nick 1999. He did like a whole series of videos on like year by year through like Richard Petty's like last few seasons, and they're pretty comprehensive. So yeah, if you haven't checked out NASCAR Nick 1999, definitely see his videos. He posted his Fan Appreciation Tour one like 7 months ago, and yeah, I thought it was a pretty solid job on that. So that was good. So yeah, that's kind of tricky. I mean, I don't have the biggest channel out there either. But yeah, if I can really like bring a lot of new stuff to it, like the 2001 500 for sure, because it's such a rich subject and there's a lot there. Petty's retirement season, I think, is similar to that. But I'm not sure. So that's kind of the thing. It's not one of the ones I currently have in the works. I'll say that, but that would kind of be it. Let's see. Alrighty. Oh, here we go. Here's an interesting one. We'll probably have this one. Well, let's see. We don't have a call on inspection yet. I don't know how much longer that's going to take. Oh, very nice. NASCAR Catholic on Twitter pointing out that, Michael McDowell DNQ'd for the Brickyard 400 in 2012. Comes back to win, not on the oval, but on the road course. But same track, though. Very cool. Do we have anything on this? I don't think I see that. Are we on here? The first Cup race with one caution since Fontana in 2012, where the one caution was for rain that ended the race after 129 laps. This from Steven Stump at Front Stretch. The one caution here, of course, was on lap 2. There you go. We're going to have to retweet that too. Interesting. Yeah, definitely an unusual race in many respects, but I do not see a results for inspection. Yeah, nothing. No, not seeing anything. Didn't see it on J-Ski either. Okay, we'll probably do one or two more questions. We're coming up on about hour 40. It's a pretty long show here for this here, and kind of get a start on the article, but we'll figure out. So, how many of the 34 drivers named Smith may have NASCAR Winston Cup wins through 1997? Let me read that again. That one has a lot of angles to it. How many of the 34 drivers named Smith have NASCAR Winston Cup wins through 1997? So how many? I hope we don't have a disqualification, because I'm all ready to. I haven't really done the full write-up on the Almirola deal, but I mean, that would still be an element of it, even if a DNQ happens, or DQ happens, and it drops somebody behind there. Yeah, Pocono DQs broke about 1.5 hours after that race. Yeah, we're coming up on 4 o'clock. I can't imagine it would be too much longer. Parker's posting his Fast Thoughts video. Few his cautions. Yeah, that's true. 2002 fall race at Talladega is the last caution-free race. That's true. There's that. Interesting. Watch this, the top 9 are all DQ'd. Well, yeah, I'm not sure about that. How many of the 34 drivers named Smith have NASCAR Winston Cup wins through 1997? We got, let's see, 2, 11, 3, 4, 0. Okay, here we go. How many of the 34 drivers named Smith have NASCAR Winston Cup wins through 1997? The answer is 2. 2 through 97. The answer was 2. That'd be Jack Smith and Louise Smith, I would think. But RD Fox 76, you were the first one on that one. No tires, just gas also. 2 is the correct answer. Let's see. There you go. Huh. Yeah, I'm not seeing it on there, and I'm not seeing it on. Nope, not seeing it on J-Ski. Just checking it again here, folks. Yeah, no idea what's going on in inspection. I'm obviously not reporting from there, so not sure. Alrighty, next question. Who amassed 42,472 points in 1967? The most in NASCAR history. That was a good points day. Who amassed 42,472 points in 1967? The most in NASCAR history. You send Pockrass a text. I don't know. We've corresponded before, but I don't know if that's... he's probably got his phone blowing up enough with other things already. See if we got anything there. Who amassed 42,472 points in 1967? The most in NASCAR history. We got guesses for Richard Petty, Pearson. Wasn't me. There you go. Excuse me. Who put an IndyCar wing on McDowell's car? There you go. All right, who amassed 42,472 points in 1967, the most in NASCAR history? The answer, of course, is Richard Petty. Richard Petty is correct. RD Fox 76 is first again. Spencer Sandlin. And a lot of you guessed Petty or Richard Petty, so very good on that. Yeah, we do both. Yeah, McDowell asked about running back at the Oval again. Yeah, Pockrass already posted his Fast Thoughts video too. So, could be all set there at the same time. Keep both these feeds open and see what's happening. There it is. All right. How bizarre. Yeah. I can't get over the Almirola thing. That's just crazy. Let's see. No. No. No, I don't think so. I'm running out of content here, folks. But if you guys have any other questions I could field here in the meantime, we might do a couple more trivia questions, but we're running a bit long here with this. I usually don't wait until the end of inspection, but this is taking a little while here. All right. Let's see. Here we go. How many times did the name Augie Pabst grace a NASCAR starting field? How many times did the name Augie Pabst, P-A-B-S-T, grace a NASCAR starting field? How many times did the name Augie Pabst grace a NASCAR starting field? So checking like how many starts Augie Pabst made. Alrighty, how many times did the name Augie Pabst grace a NASCAR starting field is the question. We got 15 and 4 and 10 and 1 and so forth. How bizarre. As actually, I'm looking at the results here. There's an old version of the results that shows Haley still in last with Almirola in 36. But I think that was at before the rest of the cars actually completed the last lap. Yeah, and yeah, exactly. You only have like the first 12 or so that cross the lines. Yeah, it was done prematurely, but it shows how quickly that spot changed. Very interesting. I'm sure you get the 10 stage top 10 in the finishing results there, and they don't want to refresh it from there, but that's not what happened. Interesting, interesting. Still not seeing any word here on that. Just keep spamming that refresh button, and that's about it. Yeah, watching it on the leaderboard there, at least the NASCAR.com leaderboard, that would be the difference. Alrighty. This is disqualification show, but behind the wall is a very good replacement name. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, disqualification show. Yeah, I mean, it's basically the same show, really. It's just post race stuff there afterwards. Yeah, the results show him running very similar. We had a situation at Coda a couple years ago. Gosh, it was one of the guys for Josh Riaum's team, and they had an issue, and they were still sitting on pit road trying to fix the truck when the race finished. And then I think it counted them as running, but they didn't actually get out of their pit stall. So like I don't know, but yeah, if he's out of gas, it should just say out of gas. So we'll see at the. I mean, maybe I can't imagine that's the thing that they're waiting for the results. Let me get the answer to this one. How many times did the name Augie Pabst grace a starting field? The answer is one. The answer is one. Well, we got to look that up. Got to look that up. That's what we will do. We will look it up. Da, 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 And let's kind of check this out here. Is this the guy that drove the Volkswagen? Was that it? Maybe that was it. Augie Pabst, born November 25th, 1933 in Milwaukee. One Cup start, 1963 at Riverside. Started 18th, finished 35th of 41 drivers in the Golden State 400 at Riverside. In the number 29 Zeekel Lubade Ford had a clutch issue after 18 laps. So not a last place finisher, so he wouldn't show up on my stats. But yeah, the only Cup start. Driving number 29, he drove a 1963 Ford. Three-time starter in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Well, hey, a road course specialist, too. Finished fourth in the 1961 24 Hours with Briggs Cunningham in a Maserati. Interesting. Well, hey, there's kind of a rabbit hole to kind of stumble across. Let me hang on to that one. Taking a look here. Nope. Nope. Still no call. I mean, Phoenix last year took a long time, but of course that was a championship race, so that would be it. Yeah, one start is the correct answer. All right. Wow, we still got 50 people in here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Just, I don't know, I wasn't originally planning on waiting for inspection, but probably. What sometimes summons it as I start playing the ending credits thing, and then like halfway through. That's happened before. That's definitely happened before. Well, before I actually had an ending animation thing, because or not animation, ending video. Because yeah, you have an ending video, and then hopefully something happens, you can break out of it really quick, rather than just hit stop streaming and then you're just at loose ends at that point. Turn 4. Yeah, it doesn't even mention Almirola in the timeline when you ran out of fuel. We got driver points posted by J-Ski. Pockers's one here. No, I don't see it. I don't see it. Alrighty. Well, let's see. Guess it wouldn't hurt to do another question. Let's see. No, not that one. I think we had that one already. What Alabama town did Tim Flock call home in the 30s? What Alabama town did Tim Flock call home in the 30s? Officials are sleeping. Yeah, probably not. Probably not. What Alabama town did Tim Flock call home in the 30s? Yeah, Brody Kostecki says he enjoyed coming out to NASCAR here, so that's good. Seemed like they had a solid piece there, the number 33. Great. No. I don't remember how long it took in the Xfinity race, but maybe it did. Yeah. I don't know. I still want to see if they actually have, the results updated to say out of fuel. That's happened before. I mean, there's been situations where it's either fuel or out of fuel is the reasoning, especially if you get down to the end of a race. It'd be very easy to have that happen. I don't think that should qualify. If he's just left stranded on pit road and the window net's down and it looked like he was out of the car at the finish of the race, that should be it. That should absolutely be it. 77 green flag laps, it says in the results. Oh, and the results still have the Truck Series playoff standings. Oh, no, it's... Okay, no, never mind. It's all scrambled up. It's got Carson... It's got the Cup Series points inverted. It's not even alphabetical. That's weird. Yeah, they just don't have the playoff standings on here. It's got Hocevar and Balicki and a couple other names on there. I mean, Hocevar and Balicki don't even get points, so that's probably it. They're probably starting with drivers who got 0. I don't know. That's weird. Anyway. What Alabama town did Tim Flock call home in the 30s is the question. Ready? Nope. Nothing there. The Alabama town that Tim Flock called home in the 30s. You got guesses for Hueytown and Auburn, Phoenix City, Mobile, Montgomery, Birmingham. The answer is Fort Payne. Fort Payne is the correct answer. Payne. Fort Payne. I don't think anybody got that one. That was a tricky one. I met Pastrana about a month ago. Right on, Patrick. Excellent. Yeah, I just brought this one out because of the 67 team coming back, so I thought that would be cool. And not doing a truck playoff bracket this year? That's interesting. All right. Let me see. Let me kind of start putting some stats together here for the article. Kind of get a little bit of that going. Ford running out of fuel. let's get some stats here. Let's kind of shift gears here a little bit and see when's the last time we had an out of fuel. Kind of do this by reason out, and we'll sort this. Okay, looks like out of fuel specifically wasn't listed as a reason for finishing last in a race. But I think fuel has. I think there should be certainly fuel pressure, but that's not the same thing. Not necessarily the same thing. This is alphabetical, so I'm checking it out here. Fuel line, fuel leak, freeze plate. No, that's too high. Yeah, several for fuel pump. 3 times for fuel pressure, 2 for fuel line, and 1 for a fuel leak. Fuel line hasn't happened since 1967 with Buck Baker at Richmond. Fuel line hasn't happened since 1951 with Fireball Roberts at Wilkesboro. Fuel pressure is more recent. That's 2012 with Jason Leffler at Michigan. Fuel pump is even more recent. That would be this year at Phoenix, the Spring Phoenix, with B.J. McLeod. Fuel tank has not been the reason for a driver finishing last since 1961 with Maurice Petty at Concord, it looks like. Gas line or gas tank. There's a fuel tank versus gas tank. Gas tank hasn't been used since May 22nd, 1966 with Joel Davis. Gas line with Tiny Lund, July 12th, 1957. So yeah, there's a lot of these over here. So yeah, that's kind of the thing. But none of these say out of fuel, and none of them just say fuel. I've seen fuel listed for other reasons, but not, I guess it hasn't been for a last place finisher in a Cup Series points race. That's probably the difference. So that would be a first for that. Let me take a look at this. Kind of get this pulled up. So I want to get a start on doing the article here in the meantime. So unofficially, this would be Almirola's 16th last place finish in the Cup Series. And it would be his 18th across the top 3 series. Number 10. It's a little bit behind the scenes here, folks. This is basically how I start every article. Just kind of getting the base stats there from the site. It would be only if it was counted as running, which it still shouldn't. It should say out of fuel, but it would be 41st time that a Cup Series last place finisher is listed as running, the 54th time across the top 3 series. Manufacturer, let's see, it was a Chevy and Xfinity and trucks this weekend, so this should be the first Ford of the weekend. It should be the 732nd in Cup and the 1016th in the Cup Series, or let's see, all 3 series, excuse me. And with the car number, we will pull that up. See, this is the other thing that makes it tricky. I mentioned this in Richmond, where it gets hard to chronicle the last place finish thing. If you have a situation where nobody's falling out and last place could be anybody, you really can't get too much of a jump start on the article besides the pre-race stuff. And then even then, you don't want to have that be too firmly written in because it could be somebody that maybe was, a pre-race technical inspection or the person who qualified last. I kind of tend to feature those drivers a little bit too. At least that's kind of the format I've used. It's not exactly the most rigid format, or at least I try not to have it be. But it would be the 100. Yeah, but in this case here, you still got some stats that would come up again. The 134th last place finish for the number 10, which is the most all time. Nobody else is more than 95, which is car number 93. Interesting how Dave Blaney keeps coming up with these stats too. Picked up the 16th last place finish of his NASCAR Cup Series career. Sunday's Verizon. I couldn't remember the sponsor for the race. We just talk about the sponsors of the races. I couldn't remember this one. I was pretty sure it was Verizon. But yeah, Verizon 200 at the Brickyard at the Indianapolis Grand Prix circuit. And it's number 10, Ford. That's going to be a little confusing too. But yeah, it was just Ford-sponsored Ford. The Ford. Let's see. I'm going to say finished running, but ran out of fuel after completing 79 of 82 laps. The finish, which occurred, Almirola's. Okay, let's take a look here. That would be Almirola's 448th career Cup start was his, I think that's his first of the season. I could be wrong about that. Let me check. Did he finish last earlier this year? He could have. I'll scroll it back up here. Let's find out. Eric Almirola. No. First one of the year. First one since this race last year. Was his first of the season. And second in a row. Let's see. First in a Cup race since this same event last year. That'd be 36 races ago. July, let's see, 31st, 2022, 36 races ago. Second time he's finished last while finishing under power. He was last at Homestead in 2016 while finishing under power. I don't believe he ran out of fuel in that one. Do we have any word? I'm checking the chat here again. Seeing how the sausage is made. Yeah, there you go. First of the season, the first of the same race last year. Yeah. Yeah, the 30, you think it would be up there, RD Fox. That's a very good point. Yeah, I don't like staying. I still work Monday to Friday, so I don't like staying up too late working on this. Although it's only 4:30 here Pacific time. But let's see. Whoop, we got inspection. Do we have this? Hang on. I don't think we have anything, but we'll see. Nope, we don't have that. And I don't think we have it on J-Ski either. I don't see it there. No, I don't see it there. Bob's asleep. He must be. Yeah, no, there you go. Okay, let's see. So let's plug all this in here now, again, truth be told, if you do get a disqualification, it's actually not too difficult to redo this. The one challenging part is redoing this paragraph on like where the ranks are in the standings, whether it's like how many times for a number, how many times for the manufacturer, so forth. And then I usually don't update the driver standings until the very end. Like I really got to make sure everything is locked in because that's more of a pain to really kind of change. So that would be kind of the situation. So in the meantime, I could always, and the other thing too is if something gets undone. We had this with Gregson, at Darlington last year. He had a time where he gets disqualified and then the disqualification's undone. So it goes back to being a profile about the other driver. And then when that happens, if I've written the profile, I usually save it in case I need to use it later. If that recurs to me, I might have an Almirola one here too. Do I? Let me see. I usually keep those archived in here too. Where is it? Other notes? No, it wouldn't be there. Where did I keep that? I thought it would be in that folder. No, not there. No. Trophies. Oh, saved article content. Yeah, there you go. Quinn Half. I don't know if I'll need that one. Number Kraft and Landauer. No, I don't. Okay. That's the other place to check, too. Of course, a lot of times I make those like custom made for the actual race, so I can't really copy them directly, but that would be another part of it. So let's see. In the Cup Series last place rankings, it was the... Okay, now we'll list it by both reasons out because it could be different depending on that. It was the 39th for the number 10, the 41st while finishing under power. And the 732nd for Ford across NASCAR's top 3 series. It was the 54th while running the 134th for the number 10 and the 1016th for Ford. Let me verify that against my other stats. Keep that there too. Yeah, it's not unheard of to have something that changes. Okay, yeah, no, Chevrolet's brakes, different car numbers, yeah. So we'll keep that there. I think it should say out of fuel, but there's been mistakes before. I mean, NASCAR's had ones where there was that Kansas race with the thunderstorm where they had the 27 and the 47 fall out, and they had the reasons out switched up. And I still don't think they fixed it. I just keep it in a note in my article list here just in case. So Almirola since last year. So we'll put a placeholder in there until we write the profile. Okay, so now from here, so originally we would have the profile and the driver. I'm going to wait to do that because it might change. So if it changes, then that'll be a different one. So what we'll do instead is we'll go into this. So Almirola was one of 39 drivers entered for 40 spots. That's a field complemented by multiple international road course stars. Let's see. In practice, Almirola ranked. Okay, let's get we'll pull up the stats pages here. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Here we go. Practice results. Where did he rank in practice? Was he up there? No, he was back in 33rd. Ranked 33rd in practice. Then in qualifying, starting qualifying results. Qualifying placed 17th in round 1A, securing him starting lineup, securing him 33rd on the starting grid with a lap of 98.064 miles per hour or 89.537 seconds. Securing 39th and last on the grid was William Byron, who was prohibited from qualifying after he failed inspection 3 times. Pre-race inspection 3 times. This would also incur a pass-through penalty after the start of Sunday's race. Byron was the only driver to not take time in qualifying, though 38th place Kevin Harvick in the number 4 Mobil 1 Ford. I always like bringing the sponsors into these. I mean, most of the time it's not the big teams like this that have as much attention. Let's see. Actually, I should put that in there. I know not every article does that. It's very easy to just say the driver's name and leave it at that. But I mean, I think the sponsors. This is where I think it's very important to kind of bring sponsors up even in the broadcasts, but I like doing it here too because I think it makes it more vivid in my mind because then we're actually talking about drivers and cars and teams and everything like that. Do we get anything else on this? Oh, do we have that? Kelly Crandall mentioned all clear. Okay, let's take a look. We'll take a look here. All right, here we go. Yes, indeed. 2 minutes ago on J-Ski, we do have a call. Inspection is complete at Indianapolis. No issues for McDowell. He is officially the winner. We do not have any other notes beyond that. Pockers will probably have the same thing here. But that is... Okay, I don't see it on Pockers' here. But on J-Ski's, that's good enough for me. So again, congratulations to Michael McDowell for pulling off a victory. His second career Cup Series win. And is first in Indianapolis, punching his ticket in the playoffs. And this means that Eric Almirola is your last place finisher. And we'll see if the results get changed to show that he's out of fuel. I would think that probably should be the way it's listed. But we'll address that in the article itself. So I hope you didn't mind a little bit of bonus there. So you kind of get behind the scenes there about how the article goes there at the same time. So that'll be the situation. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Stay tuned to this channel on Tuesday for my next video that's going to be on Chuck Bound. If you're in the Patreon, patreon.com/lastcaronbrock at the $5 and up levels, you will have advanced access to that video. You can even join that level and you can see it tonight. Otherwise, stay tuned for that on Tuesday. For further updates on the channel here, my Twitter feed at lastcaronbrock. The website, of course, is lastcar.info. And the next episode of this Behind the Wall show will be next Sunday after the Cup race at Watkins Glen. We'll talk about both the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series out there and another round of road course racing as we get even closer to the beginning of the playoffs. Hope you've enjoyed the show tonight, and we will do another show and we'll talk about it then. So have a wonderful evening, everyone, and I'll see you all next time.